Good afternoon, students. So today we're going to do the week 10 instructor session, and we're going to go over how to evaluate credible sources. And so this week we're going to learn about APA, which is the American Psychological Association. So when you learn APA, you learn to cite a source. So when we cite sources, whenever we use numerical information, historical information, medical information, or uncommon knowledge, you always have to cite the source in text citation within the body of the paper. And so when you cite a source, you have to give the author's name, the date, and the page number. Now, the year, when I say date, I mean, the year, and then the page number. If it's a direct quote, and then if it's a paraphrase quote, then you don't need the quotation marks and you don't need the page number. And so we're going to go over how to do the week 10 Credible Sources Worksheet. And so many students have a hard time doing that worksheet. And so without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and we're going to go over the week 10 worksheet. So how to evaluate credible sources for the week 10 Credible Sources assignment. So in this presentation, I'm going to go over what is APA. I'm going to go over how to do the week 10 Credible Sources assignment. Then I'm going to go over your week 11 forum. And then I'll talk about different types of fake news and using CAPOW to evaluate for credible sources. When do we use APA in in-text citations? APA stands for American Psychological Association. APA is used in social science research and business research papers. We use APA when we cite medical facts, historical facts, numbers, statistics, percentages, complex facts, unusual facts, anything that is not common knowledge. Example of common knowledge in the United States, December 25th is Christmas Day. December 24th is Christmas Eve. January 1st is New Year's Day. And so in the United States, everybody knows this. So common knowledge is knowledge that everybody knows. So we don't cite common knowledge. Example of uncommon knowledge. The Chinese New Year is based on the lunar calendar. Not many Americans know that. And then you have to cite, where did you get this unusual fact from? And then you cite within your paper the author's name, the date, and the page number. When you all wrote your week 9 persuasive post, many of you were missing your APA in-text citations. Some students discussed historical facts without telling the reader where he got the source. Some of you talked about medical facts like symptoms of a disease or how frequent that disease occurred or a definition. You need to cite the source. Some of you cited dates, percentages, numbers without citing the source. So when you fail to cite the source, you are committing plagiarism because you are stealing someone else's research. Think of direct quotes as the research actually talking to you, like in a dialogue. Remember, for our week 5 quiz, we said that we use dialogue, we use quotation marks for our dialogues. And so you need to have a beginning quotation mark and an ending quotation mark for your in-text citation, direct quote in-text citation. So to repeat, we use APA for medical facts, historical facts, dates, percentages, statistics, numbers, and definitions. When we use APA in-text citations, these citations occur within the body of your paper. I will go over pie structure and how to exactly insert in-text citations later on. Here are some common APA in-text citation mistakes made by students in previous classes in their week 9 posts. So someone wrote, marijuana lessens the effect of chemotherapy. So that's a medical fact. So therefore, you need to cite the source. You need to write the author, the date, and the page number. And then a paraphrase. Marijuana makes the side effects of chemotherapy less severe. So even if you put the author's words in your own words, you still need to cite the author's name and the date, but but you don't need a page number. Then at the very end of your week 9 post, and also at the very end of your paper, you have to write a reference citation. And so here you have to have, some of you just gave me a web address, which is not enough. You have to give me the author's name, like Smith Patrick, the date, then you italicize the article name, and then you have the publication name, American Medical Association, retrieved June 16, 2021 from web address. And so when you have, and then how do you know if that article is credible? So I'm going to go over CAPOW. So C in CAPOW stands for that the article is current and it was written within the last 10 years. A stands for the author is an expert. P, purpose, means that the purpose of the article is not an advertisement. O, objective, means that the article is factual, objective, and covers both sides of the issue, and it's not an ad. W, writing purpose, means that the writing style, not writing purpose, writing style is free of grammar errors and has a logical essay structure. So when you use CAPOW, then you know that your source is credible. Because then as you look at your article, the first question you ask yourself is C for CAPOW, how current is this article? A, author, who wrote the article? Is he an expert? P, purpose. Whoa, is this an advertisement? O, is it factual, objective? W, writing style. O, does it have correct grammar and essay structure? And if your article fulfills all those criteria, then you have a credible source. Any article that does not fulfill those criteria is fake news. And we want to avoid fake news in our papers. So here are some in-text citation examples. Music therapy improves short-term memory. So there you have, this is a direct quote, and you need beginning quotation and an ending quotation. Then you need the author, the date, and the page number. So when you fill out your Credible Sources worksheet, you are going to give me 3 credible sources. And then within the credible source, you're going to give me 3 direct quotes, 3 paraphrase quotes, and 3 reference citations. I'll show you what I mean in a second. Right now, I'm just giving you some examples of in-text citations. So that we use in-text citation for uncommon knowledge. Music therapy improves short-term memory. The level of poverty decreased through legal prostitution. And so here you have to cite it. Whenever you have any kind of numbers, dollars, or historical facts or medical facts, here you have $13.50. In Missouri, new officers start at $13.50 an hour. And so here you have the author name, the date, and the page number. Here you have percentages. 14% of fewer officers in 2017 led to 20% more knife and crime. And so here you have percentages and dates. You have to cite the source. Reparations will be a step forward toward breaking the generational curse of belittlement. He's talking about slavery. And here that's an historical fact. And so that needs a author, date, and page number. And so here you have 60% of adolescents. And so here you have percentages, and you need to cite the source. And here you have a medical fact. Team-based video games can improve mental adaptability. And so here you have author, date, and page number. So all of these in-text citations occur within the body of your paper. A reference citation occurs at the end of your paper after the last page. And then you should have the author's name, the date, the name of your article, Purdue APA, then the publication name, date that you retrieved the website, and then the web address. Many of you were just giving me your web addresses as your source. And remember, for your essay too, you need to have at least 1 in-text citation and 1 APA source. So here's your week 10 Credible Sources assignment. So you're going to have to write three credible sources, and you're going to have to go through CAPOW. C, that it's current. A, author, it's written by an expert. P, purpose, it's not an ad. O, objective, it's factual. And W, writing style, it has good grammar. So in your week 10 credible sources assignment, you're going to get you're going to give me the website link. Then you're going to give me the title of your article, the title of your website, and then in 1 to 3 sentences, explain why this source is credible. So this source is credible because they work with the CDC to report world health issues. I can use this paper to show people why we need to social distance. So I'm talking about this article, the adverse effect, impact on US society of COVID-19. So that's the topic. And then you write that this is a credible source because it comes from a government website. So using CAPOW. So the article is current, it's C. A, it's written by a doctor. P, the purpose, it's not an ad. O, it's written, it's objective, filled with facts. And W, its writing style is formal and the grammar is correct. So since this article fulfills all of the CAPOW, then this article is credible. Next on the worksheet, this is all for one source. Then on the worksheet, it says quote with APA in-text citation. So that means you're going to give me a direct quote. And so here's an example of a direct quote. 70% of people with COVID-19 die. And then you have Smith 2020, the date, and then the page number. So that I took a sentence from this article, the adverse impact on US society, in order to do my direct quote. A paraphrase quote is when I put that same quote in my own words. And so the author wrote 70% of people with COVID died. Then I put it in my own words in a paraphrase. Most people die when people get COVID-19, especially if they're unvaccinated, they pass away. And so here you have to put in your author name and date. But when you have a paraphrase quote, you don't need to put quotation marks and you don't have to put in a page number. Okay, so here you summarize a sentence from this article in order to cite this source. Then you're going to write the reference citation, which comes at the end of the paper usually. And so here you have the author name, the date, and then here you should, this should be italicized. Okay, so I will italicize this. And the old APA had me doing this with the quotation marks. For the new APA, you don't use quotation marks, you italicize the article name. Then after that, you have American Medical Journal publication, okay, and then retrieved November 25th, 2021 from, and then here you have World Health Center, World Health Organization.org. So that's your complete first, this is your complete one credible source. Then you can do the same thing for source number 2. Okay, so here's source number 2 is American Cancer Organization, Cancer in Society. The title of the web page, American Cancer website. Then this source is credible because of CAPOW. The article is current, C. A, the author is an expert, P, and not an actor. And the purpose, and P, it's not an ad. O, it is objective and shows both sides of the issue. W, writing style is formal and has no grammar errors. Then you're going to write a direct quote, which means that you give me the quote word per word exactly as what the author wrote as your citation. So when you give a direct quote, you're telling it exactly as you see it in the article. Then you need quotation marks and the page number. Next, after that, you're going to do a paraphrase quote, in which you summarize the in-text citation. And so here, you don't need quotation marks, and you don't need a page number. And last, you're going to give me the reference citation, in which you're going to italicize. Okay, you're going to italicize the article name. First, you have the last name, first name, the date. You italicize the article name. Then you give me the publication name. And then you give me the date that you retrieved the website. So retrieved November 25th, 2021 from. And then you give me your web address. So this entire thing occurs at the end, usually at the end of your paper, in alphabetical order also. And so this is the reference citation. And so your reference citation should match your in-text citation, so that when you write your essay 2, for your essay 2, your in-text citation will occur inside the body of your paper, while the reference citation occurs at the end of your paper on the last page. This is for your week 12 final draft, as well as for your week 11 rough draft. But for the week 10 Credible Sources Worksheet, you just have to write in this order your week 10, the 3 sources. Now, a lot of students ask me, are these the 3 sources for my essay 2? Where do these 3 sources come from? And so I always tell students that these 3 credible sources could be just a hobby, something that you're interested in, or it could be for your week 9 persuasive post, or it could be for your essay 2. So I tell students it's up to them to decide the purpose of these credible sources, because for the week 10 assignment, it doesn't matter what the purpose of your credible sources are. As long as you write correct, the purpose of this assignment is to learn how to write correct APA and how to find credible sources. That's it. Okay, so all you have to do is find 3 credible sources. How you use them is up to you. Okay, that's a common question among students. Then you're going to give me a third source, and do it the same thing, okay, that you did for the first 2 sources. And the reason why they ask for 3 credible sources is that for most research papers, when you write a research paper, minimum 3 sources, okay? In the real world, you need at least 3 credible sources at the end of your research paper. For this class, we just allow you to just do the 1. And to know that that's a very easy paper that we're requiring for this writing class. But most papers require 3 credible sources, not 1. Anyway, so for your third source, you do the same thing that you did for the first 2 sources. You give me the website link, the title of the website, CAPOW of why it's credible. Then you give me a direct quote, which is you cite it word per word. Remember to put in quotation marks. Then you write author, date, page number right after the quote. Then you have just your paraphrase quote where you summarize the quotation, any sentence, and then you give me the author name and the date. And you don't need to have put that at the end of your paper. You don't need page number, and you don't need quotation marks. Then, as usual, and this I have to change because they changed the APA. So now with APA, okay, you have to do it like this. So here you have the author's name. You have the date. You always have to remember to put these little periods after that. Then you have the name of the article. Oops, period has to come right after, like this. Then you have the name of the journal, publication, like where it came from. And then you have to write retrieved, on what date. Okay, so retrieved November 25th, 2021 from WHO.org. Okay. In my case, I happen to take 3 different articles from the WHO Gov website. So that was where I found my 3 articles. You could do that too if you want. But as long as you find a good website that is credible, and then you can find 3 credible sources. And that's it. That's all it is to this week's assignment, the week 10 assignment, is just find 3 credible sources. And if you're still having trouble doing this, you can always schedule a Zoom session with me, either before the lecture or after the lecture. And then I can go over your assignment with you. So these are all samples, of what you can do for your, and then this whole thing where I just wrote 1, source 2, source 3. That's your entire assignment. That's it, okay? Should take no more than 1 page for this assignment. It follows the worksheet that's in your week 10 assignment portal. Next, if you already understand how to do your week 10 worksheet, now the week 11 forum, okay? All you have to do is place your rough draft of your essay 2 into your week 11 forum. So you need to place your week 11 forum. This is our last forum. Can't believe it. Didn't it go so fast? Anyway, so you got to place your first post before Wednesday. Then you have until Sunday in order to post to 2 students. So by now, you all know the drill because we've been through this for like the entire 4 months. And so here's an example of someone's books versus movies. To avid book readers like myself, there's nothing like getting a new book, the feel, its smell, and the excitement of getting to know the characters. Now, however, it seems every delightful book you read is turned into a movie thanks to modern technology. So what's wrong with this student's paper? She forgot to replace you with a person. This is a very common error in student papers because when we use you, we're writing the way we talk, okay? When we in daily conversation, we're always saying to the person, oh, you should go see that movie, or you should, you're so fat. My aunt used to tell me that. You're so fat, you need to exercise more. So I remember I went and exercised. Now she goes, my aunt goes, you're so thin, you need to eat more. There was no pleasing her. But my point is, we use you all the time, and it's very conversational, and it's very easy to write the way we talk. But when we write an academic paper, we want to write, we're writing about somebody else. When we do research, we're researching about somebody else. And that's why when we write an academic paper, we want to use third-person case. And so we want to get used to writing about other people. We want to get used to not writing the way we talk. Because when we write the way we talk, we sound too conversational, we sound too informal, and we sound too young, juvenile, like children write the way they talk. Adults don't, at least not in academic papers. Exceptions are for like business communications, okay, in business communication, but that's because you're writing a commercial, or you want the call to action, you want the reader to do something for you, and you want to bond with the reader so that they'll do your call to action, they'll buy your product if you bond with the reader. When you do an oral presentation like a PowerPoint, and you're trying to teach your audience a specific skill, you would say, first, you do this, second, you do that, third, you do that, okay? When you're teaching people a new skill in an oral presentation, and you want your audience to bond with you and not be bored, silly, and fall asleep, yeah, you use you and your to bond with the audience. But the thing about academic writing is you're not writing an academic paper to bond with your audience. You're writing an academic paper simply to give the audience your research facts. You're telling them what you did your research, and here are the facts, okay? COVID-19, you need to get, COVID-19 is a serious infection, or the flu, people need to get a vaccine. You're telling people information. There's no need to bond with anybody. People are only interested in your facts. So as a result, we don't use you and your. So here you would say, there is nothing like getting a new book. So here, books versus movies, for instance. So in this case, the paper is about the writer wants the reader to know that books are better than movies. So you're giving the reader facts about, you know what, don't read a book. I mean, don't watch a movie, read a book. Okay, that's what it is. So here, okay, now it seems every delightful book a person reads is turned into a movie thanks to modern technology. There are also people who prefer to watch the movie version of the book than read it. Okay, so here she used people. All right, so I can't mix and match. If I use a person, so if you watch my PowerPoint, okay, how to do second person case. How do I get rid of my you and your? You can either replace it with a person, a person, a person, a person. You can replace it with people, 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 or you can replace it with one, 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 one. And so I've already uploaded that PowerPoint into your announcements, how to get rid of the you and your, okay? And so those are the three ways, but I cannot have a person and people in the same paragraph. If I'm going to use a person, then I have to change people into, because you got to match, okay? You got to be consistent, okay? A person who also prefers to watch the movie version of the book can read it, but I am not one of them. Reading books makes a person use their imagination. We don't say his or her, even though that's grammatically correct, but it's much more correct in social instances to just not use gender. So I am not one of them. Reading books makes a person use their imagination to visualize the characters, setting, and the events that take place. And so she has to, so when you do you and your, you can also say the reader, instead of saying you, okay? So three ways: a person, you can replace it with a person, replace it with people, or you replace it with oneself, which is very formal English, or you replace it with different nouns, like a reader, Americans. And if you watch you look at my PowerPoint, watch my video, you'll know what I mean. So here, and also make sure that if you're going to say a person, you should keep it to a person. If you're going to use people, keep it to people. And also keep it consistent throughout your paper. Don't change a person here, and suddenly you're using people and then ones. So keep it one, 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 a person, a person, a person, a person. You've got to keep it consistent throughout your paper. Okay, so that gives your paper a certain texture and a certain consistency. So here, she has to replace all of her you and yours with a person, okay, in their writing, you know. And later, what happens is, okay, I'm not going to replace all of them, okay, so I'm not going to bore you silly with a person sees what the director envisions. So anyway, you get the idea. So you can then replace, she needs to replace all her use. It's a lot of work, you know, but you lose points if I see that you did not, you know, fix your paper after I told you to replace you and your with a person and a person's, you're going to lose points. So I expect you to write an academic paper. So when we write using a person, when we talk about someone else, that's called third person case. When we write using you and your, that's called second person case. Second person case, as I said, is used in business communications and used in technical writing. When you're teaching someone to do something, and also in oral presentations, but not in academic papers. So she has to, but she did write a good overall, this essay. So if I were the peer reviewer, I would say you need to replace your you and your, but you have a great thesis statement. Okay, so she did have a very good thesis statement where she said that reading is much better than movies. And then she gave why, okay? Then she used her body paragraphs to talk about why she thinks reading is better than movies. Okay, so overall, her paper was very good. And then for your final draft, you need to make sure you have really good APA formatting. And so here you need to double space your paper, So you highlight that, highlight everything. Okay, and then you go to Control. Okay, I'm going to press Control 2. Watch what happens. Ooh, isn't that cool? All right, and so here everything becomes double space. All right, so you need to have Times New Roman size 12 for your final draft, and you need to have it double spaced. Now for your forums, that's the problem with the forums, is we're not able to see all of this formatting. That's okay for the forums. And you don't have to attach your paper to the forums. It's okay if the format's off in the forums, okay? Because in the forums, we're just looking at the essay structure and making sure that you have good grammar. And then for your week 12 final draft, you got to make sure you have it like this. Okay, I'm gonna go to Control 1, and it's gonna go back to, you know, I did that. So here are some examples of peer review. Okay, so when you have until Wednesday to post your first post, and then you post, and then Sunday you go, Jan, you have a really great essay. You have a thesis with 3 reasons. You write about how books are better than movies because books improve language skills, books enhance imagination, and books give more story plot. Your thesis is great. You wrote, you know, it's the last sentence of the first paragraph. You know, you've got great structure. I wish I could write like you, or something like that. So you can give a mixture of appreciation feedback, coaching feedback, and the like. Okay, so here you have, but Jody, you did a great job, but you are missing your in-text citations. So you can tell other people. So basically, what's different about Essay 1 and Essay 2 is the APA. Okay, in Essay 1, you didn't have to do APA, but for Essay 2, you have to do APA. You have to have at least one. So you can tell other people, oh, you're missing your APA in-text citation, or hey, I found a better research source you can use for your paper. So that's why after you post your first post and post it to students, go back to the forum to see if students or if I gave you additional feedback, and then incorporate that feedback into your final draft, just like you did for Essay 1. And that's known as peer review. I know you know that already. Now you know the drill, okay? All right, so before I go on any farther, okay, and so now you know how to do week 11. And so the rest of this lecture, I'm going to talk about how to find reliable sources and how to find credible sources. And so when you go to the online library, you're going to find something called primary sources. That's a reliable source, okay? Everything in the online library is reliable and credible. So primary source means that the witness or the first person wrote it. In other words, it's a first person directly from that, the experience came directly from that first person who witnessed it. You are the one who witnessed that event. You wrote about what you experienced. You are the primary source. And so primary sources are original sources, conference presentations, dissertations, memoirs, photographs, paintings, speeches, works of literature, government documents. Secondary sources means that you're writing about somebody else, you know. So let's say my grandmother lived through World War I. She wrote a diary about it, which she did. So primary source would be the actual diary, that she's the one who lived through it. She wrote it. Secondary source is if I write a story about my grandmother's life, okay? So secondary sources are not the original sources. Instead, these sources seek to analyze, interpret, or comment on primary sources. And so if I want to write a biography about my grandmother's life, who lived through World War II, that's considered a secondary source because obviously I didn't live through World War II. I don't look that old. Anyway, so if you're writing about someone else, you're not the primary witness, then it's biography, then it's a secondary source. So biographies, literature reviews, articles written about primary sources are all secondary sources. And then here, all of these sources are also, Wikipedia is not a reliable source, okay? So if you go to encyclopedia, world fact books, dictionaries, atlases, journals, those are all secondary sources. They are reliable. And then if you go to your regular library, they can have books, periodicals, reports, videos, and journals. And these can't be checked out because everybody's sharing them. And so this is in a physical library. And those are known as reserve reference materials. Those are also reliable. And the most reliable article is a peer-reviewed article. So a peer-reviewed article is an article that other writers have written about, and then they've deemed it a really good article. And so peer-reviewed articles are usually the scholarly articles or the science articles that you're reading in your other classes. Okay, those are peer-reviewed. That means that Dr. Fauci's research, for instance, everybody has read his research. People have commented whether they agree with his research, disagree with his research. So whenever someone writes about your research and it's replicable, that means a peer has reviewed his research. That's what a peer-reviewed source is. That's all. So the difference between a peer-reviewed source and a popular source also includes things like the National Enquirer or all those magazines and newspapers that you see in the grocery store that aren't necessarily fully credible. Some are credible, some are not. So those are known as popular culture or popular sources, okay? And so here, that's when you have to use CAPOW in order to ascertain which popular source is credible and which popular source is not credible. That's the difference between Google and Google Scholar. When you use Google Scholar, everything's credible. But if you use Google, some of it will be credible, some of it won't be credible. And then you have to use CAPOW, C, to see if it's current within the last 10 years. Because if the article is older than 10 years, it's obsolete. A, if it's written by an actor, what does the actor, Robert Redford, for instance, what does he know about the environment, even though he considers himself an environmentalist? But then he thinks of that as a kind of hobby that or a passion that he's very serious about. That's nice, you know, but who is more credible, Robert Redford or some scientist or a doctor? Okay, and so you have to gauge and which is more credible, who is the expert. So A is author has to be expert, like a doctor, a scientist, some PhD, you know, with credentials, not actors, not athletes, and not politicians. Those are not credible sources. Let's see. So articles are written, but if you're studying drama or you're studying theater, then actors can be a credible source. Okay, so here I turn the tables. I was saying before, oh yeah, about it depends on what it's about. Okay, if it's about if an athlete is talking about, if a basketball player is talking about basketball, of course that's credible because he's a primary source. As soon as you become a primary source, that is, you are the person experiencing that event, you become reliable, which is what I was saying. The difference between a primary source and a secondary source. Some secondary sources can be not reliable. Primary sources are good. It depends. But anyway, so here you have a difference about the difference between peer-reviewed and scholarly sources and popular sources. Okay, so here you have a peer-reviewed source tends to be written by experts. Okay, the papers are in great detail, whereas, and then they always have to cite their sources. Okay, that's what sets encyclopedias and Wikipedia apart. In Wikipedia, they have many articles. They don't cite the sources. And so if somebody does not cite their sources, then that paper is suspect. It means I could just make it up off the top of my head. I can say, hey, did you know that everybody on Earth, we all have blood from Mars? I could just make that up. I could make up off the top of my head. 75% of people are Martian, okay? And I don't need to have proof. I don't have any in-text citations, nada. Would you believe me? Not really. So when you have a source with no in-text citation, this is why it's important that your paper has in-text citations. Otherwise, people will think you just made that up off the top of your head. So when you have in-text citations, it makes your paper look more professional and it makes your paper look more credible. And so always, you know, in a Peer-reviewed, that's a difference. That's another big difference between a peer-reviewed source and a popular source. In a popular source like Wikipedia, some of their articles are cited and some are not. And in a scholarly source, okay, you seldomly have photographs, okay? Usually you have tables or graphs. And whereas in a popular source, you have lots of photographs and illustrations that are often pretty to look at. So that's another, because a popular source is considered less serious, whereas a peer-reviewed scholarly source is considered more serious. And here, when you have a popular source, sometimes the website has no strict guidelines for submissions, just like Wikipedia. Anybody can upload anything, which makes it not a good source. So in an academic journal, they have very specific guidelines for papers to be published and a rigorous peer review process. Each paper will list when it was submitted to the reviewers, when it was submitted, when it was accepted for publication. So that's the difference between a peer-reviewed source and a popular source. Now we're going to talk about unreliable sources. So while peer-reviewed articles are, so we're going to review. So what were the most reliable sources? The sources in your online library, like the primary, secondary sources, and also the peer-reviewed articles, like the scholarly articles on Google Scholar. And then if an article passes CAPOW, those are the three ways you can find reliable sources. Unreliable sources, now I'm going to cover different kinds of unreliable sources, different kinds of fake news, so that you can avoid because you can't believe everything you read. So you can avoid fake news and you can avoid making the mistake of believing something that's not true, like the stuff on social media. So unreliable sources include Wikipedia, blogs, tweets, personal pages, some of the sites ending in .com, like answer.com, that varies. .com is so big, so expansive. So once again, when it's something so broad, you have to use CAPOW to evaluate whether that source is good or not good. Forums and biased sites. Okay, so how do you find credible sources? This is what I was talking about before. Currency, how new is the website? Authority, who wrote it? Purpose, what do they want me to know? Objective, is it fact or opinion? Writing style, does it list sources? So as soon as you have a paper with no sources, then it's opinion. But as soon as you have a paper that has in-text citation, that becomes fact, then it becomes objective. Also, if a paper covers both sides of an issue, it's objective. Okay, so you don't want to have a biased article that only covers one side of an issue. So usually if I have students who are in this class, I would ask them, do you think that the magazines in this picture, do you think that they are credible sources for an academic paper? Are these scholarly or non-scholarly sources? Okay, no, they're not. Okay, they're not fake news, but they're not scholarly. They're considered popular sources. In other words, based on popular culture. So not necessarily, it's not serious, okay? Because when we have scholarly sources, they tend to be written by experts and they're serious. So now I'm going to go over the different kinds of unreliable sources or fake news. So fake news is a term that has come to mean different things to different people. At its core, we are defining fake news as those news stories that are false, that the story itself is fabricated with no verifiable facts, sources, or quotes. Sometimes these stories may be propaganda that is intentionally designed to mislead the reader, or may be designed as clickbait, written for economic incentives. Okay, so on social media, all over the place, you've got clickbait. Whatever happened to such and such an actress? click here to find out. Oh, that's definitely. And whenever you see something like sponsored stories or ads, you know that's clickbait. That's not reliable. Okay, so fake news is when you make a claim without using credible sources like Wikipedia. So fake news is used to confuse the public. So do you believe everything you see or read on social media? You shouldn't. So basically, fake news is when you gossip, when you do rumors, when you say, hey, did you hear that Mr. Thomas is dating Mrs. Smith? And there's no proof. There's nothing to prove what he just said. It's just rumor. And the problem with rumor and gossip is that it can ruin someone's reputation. And so we don't want to engage in gossip and rumor. So whenever we make a claim with no credible source, nothing to back it up, we are engaging in fake news, and we don't want to do that. So every time we make a claim about anything, we have to have credible sources and credible evidence. So here are more different kinds of fake news. Propaganda, adopted by governments, corporations, and nonprofits to manage attitudes, values, and knowledge, appeals to emotion, can be beneficial or harmful. And so in some countries like China, President Xi would say that he's the best president in the world. You need to worship President Xi like he's a saint or a god. And that's even more so in North Korea. And so that's propaganda. In other words, you make a claim with no credible sources, and some world leaders use propaganda to control what people think. And you're not allowed to say President Xi is a terrible president. See, so it's biased. So you want something, when you want something that's a credible source, you want something that's not biased, that's balanced. You tell both sides of the story. If you're only hearing one side of the story, that's also fake news. That's cherry picking. And then clickbait. Clickbait is eye-catching, sensational headlines designed to distract, often misleading content, and may not reflect the headline. And then instead, they just want you to click on it. And every time you click on it, the person who created the link makes money. Sponsored content. Advertising made to look like an editorial. Potential conflict of interest for genuine news organizations. Consumers might not identify content as advertising as it is not clearly labeled. Okay, partisan. So partisan means that you only talk about one side of an issue. Most TV channels, news channels, are partisan because they talk about their side of the issue without talking about the other side of the issue. So for instance, if all I keep saying is President so-and-so, he always does really good job. He never does anything wrong. That's partisan. Okay, if you want to be nonpartisan in order to be credible, you would say President so-and-so, he did a great job at A, B, and C, but then President so-and-so did a bad job at C, D, and E, when you're talking about the same president, okay? So you want to talk about both sides of an issue. And these days, just about all the TV channels lean either towards being for the Democrats or for the Republicans. Okay, nobody does it like, because it's all about ratings. If you were to look at, if you Google news from the 60s, and that escapes me the name of Walter Cronkite. If you Google Walter Cronkite, okay, on YouTube, now he lived around the 60s. That was objective. But you're going to notice that when you tell objective news, it's boring. You know, if you would say the Vietnam War occurred today, and then we had such and such and such and such on the benefits of blah, 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 blah. And then the good and bad parts are, you know, that sort of thing. Well, that's really boring. So that's why people have partisan news, because when you take sides, it's exciting. It brings in the ratings and it brings in advertising. And this is why you have fake news, partisan news channels everywhere, you know. And then conspiracy theory tries to explain simple, complex realities as a response for fear or uncertainty. In other words, a conspiracy theory means that you make up a story and you would say, oh, aliens have landed. Oh, it was a very famous one. Oh, I can't remember the name. Anyway, so when you have a conspiracy theory, you make up a theory that has no credible evidence. And you reject experts and authority. Pseudoscience, purveyors of greenwashing, miracle cures, and climate change denial, misrepresents real science and studies with exaggerated or false claims. Snake oil. Okay, back in the 19th century, snake oil salesmen would sell you these bottles of, if you drink this, you're going to be young forever. If you drink this, it'll cure all your ailments. Okay, that's known as a snake oil salesman or pseudoscience. Okay. Another one that's fake news is satire and hoax. If you go to www.onion.com, they satirize real news. It's actually kind of funny, but they tell you straight up that they are a satirical website, so you know right away that not to take them seriously. And then sometimes they would fabricate bogus websites that look so much like the real website. Okay, then it would be entirely fabricated stories. Then you can have misinformation, which includes a mix of factual and a mix of real information. And then you can have counterfeit. Okay, counterfeit. I was told that during the 2016 election, there was a lot of counterfeit fake news coming from foreign countries about the political candidates in order to sway political opinion. So that's why you can't trust what you read on social media. Doctored content means that these days you can have something called a deep fake video, where you can make somebody look or say something they didn't actually say. There was a video about Nancy Pelosi, and it made her look like this, you know, and it made her look drunk, and it made her look like she was ill, when actually the whole video was doctored. So the video can be made to look real, but it's not. So whenever you read something, you have to look it up to make sure that what you're seeing is for real. And anything can be modified or doctored, not just video. So here you have an example of clickbait, you know, and so clickbait is something very beautiful and sensational, and wow, she's beautiful, I'm going to click on that. And then you find all this false information in ads. So they're not reliable sources. Tips for handling dietary restrictions. But you know, and so here you have more. Is this for real or is it an ad? So here it says California Beef Council. I'm guessing they're gonna have you talk about everybody should eat beef. Okay, so if they're trying to get you to buy their product, obviously they're not being very objective. So if it's some kind of ad, it's not a reliable source. Propaganda, and we covered this already. In other words, politicians make use of propaganda in order to control public opinion. Okay, and lots of websites like the Onion. Here's an example of the Onion, in which you have lazing about by installing, LA mayor prevents his kid from becoming lazy by installing spikes on his family couch. Oh, obviously this is false, you know, but it's satire. And on the Onion, so you know not to believe this, and you know that this is fake news and it's an unreliable source. You wouldn't use it on the paper. And here are other examples. You can have sloppy journalism, used to be called yellow journalism. In other words, when reporters, they rush their articles out too fast without checking, and they make mistakes, okay? And so sometimes they want to be the first to publish their article, and then they make mistakes. So that's sloppy. And then you have manipulated photos, you have biased and slanted news. Now in 2018, these were all the neutral news, objective, reliable sources. Remember, objective means you're not to the left, you're not to the right. It means you're not taking sides, basically. When someone does not take sides in news, and that means that they are a reliable source. And then you notice by 2021, there are no the word neutral is gone, okay? Because now you've got something called media bias. Media bias is when you focus only on your side and then you leave out the other person. So if you're media bias to the left, according to this, CBS, NBC News, Fortune magazine, all of these news all go to the left. That means they're for President Biden, okay? Biden can do no wrong. And people on the right, Biden is an idiot. Trump is the one everybody should be cheering. And so left and right, there's nobody left. And that's called media bias. Okay? Media bias means that you can't always believe the news because they focus on one side or the other. So now these days, if you want to get the full balanced news, you need to watch a little bit of this and then mix it in with a little bit of that and come up with your own opinion. That's how you do it. That's called critical thinking. Okay. So, what TV station? So here's another one about the different kinds of misinformation and disinformation, satire, misleading content, imposter content, when genuine sources are impersonated, fabricated content. New content is 100% false, as in propaganda, designed to deceive and do harm. False connection, when headlines and visual captions don't support the content. False context and manipulated content. And how do you recognize fake news? And this is a version of CAPOW, okay? It's just like CAPOW. Fake news, a fake news headline tends to be very emotional, sensational, okay? Consider the source. If the source is unknown, it's usually not a reliable source. If an article does not have facts, quotes, and images, it could be a false story. It is extremely easy to cut and paste quotes from other stories or to use mislabeled photographs. So you need to try a Google reverse image search to find photographic sources to see if the photograph is for real. And also, we don't trust whatever we see on social media. I mean, that just goes to, and I think that's it. All right. Yeah. Now you're like, okay. So if I had students here, I would ask, how many of you believe what you see in social media? You know, and I will stop share. And so that ends my lecture on credible sources. And so this week, you're just going to learn about, CAPOW, C for current, A for author is an expert, P, if the general purpose is not an ad, O, it has to be objective and not one-sided and biased, and W, writing style means no grammar mistakes, and it's got to have good essay structure. And so CAPOW is how you can tell something is reliable or not reliable. So if you have any questions about your week 10 Credible Sources worksheet, you can always email me and I will gladly answer any questions that you may have. So have a great week and happy holidays.